So here's what I really like to tell when I do a lot of counseling with parents of sensitive boys. And I like to tell the parents to let their sons know that they have in common a lot with the great spiritual leaders of our times. Mahatma Gandhi was sensitive. Martin Luther King. The U.S. President Abraham Lincoln. So they're in very good company, even if they feel, well, gee, I don't feel like getting to, doing what some of the other guys do growing up. And but you always have to reinforce with your sensitive son that they're in the company of the greatest world leaders that are peacemakers. And they might not have fit in very well with aggressive, combative males and might have been humiliated also, but look what they ended up doing by their compassionate behavior. When sensitive males feel free to experience their sensitivity, they discover the joys of their finely tuned senses. And when they're allowed to flourish, helped by family and friends, they know the peace of self-acceptance. And one thing that's really important is that sensitive boys who are accepted growing up, who have parents who say, this is great that you're sensitive and you're artistic or you like music, you're kind, you can say how you feel. When you have parents and they're in an environment where their peers, the kids at school, and the teachers are saying, wow, that's great, not only do they emotionally work out as well as a non-sensitive person, but frequently better. They function at a better level. The flip side, unfortunately, is if, for example, you had two brothers in a family. One brother was not sensitive and the other was. And let's say you had a parent who was abusive. Well, the non-sensitive boy growing up would just say, oh, whatever, this is my mother or father, they act crazy, it doesn't bother me, and they can tune it out. But the sensitive child will take that in deeper and they will be more traumatized. So that's why it's so important for sensitive children growing up to be in a very loving, accepting environment. So there's a wide continuum of behavior among sensitive males, and as I mentioned, and this is interesting. Even though most of the men I interviewed said growing up they avoided a lot of the violence, every sensitive boy is different. One boy said, oh, I like going hunting with my BB gun. So it didn't make him non-sensitive. And I actually had one man I interviewed from Canada, and he had probably the worst job for a sensitive man. He was a jailer. He worked in a jail. Can you imagine a sensitive man working with really angry, tough prisoners? And he would want to go away hunting on trips. But I don't think he was so into the actual hunting and killing animals as much as he had a chance to get away from everyone and be alone in nature. So it was interesting. And actually one man liked to play ice hockey. And I don't know how ice hockey is here, but in America and Canada, it's very violent. They encourage people to get into fights. And I said, I don't get it. You're a highly sensitive man. How could you like to play ice hockey where people are hitting each other with a hockey stick? And he says, well, I just didn't deal with the violent part. I just dealt with the finesse of it and the skill. So again, every sensitive male is different. So Dr. Elaine Aron came up with the fact that approximately 30% of all sensitive people are called high sensation seekers. And it means that they enjoy stimulating activities and get bored easily. So you have a bit of a contradiction, because you can have a sensitive person, but who also likes to go out and do things all the time, and 70% are more introverted and like to be more quiet, but 30% do like to go out and do things. So you do have that mixture. So you can be a sensitive person and still like stimulating activities. So this, I think, is so important. So as I mentioned, the neurological system is wired differently in sensitive males, and there's some biological factors that influence the behavior of boys. But how this particular society values and considers sensitivity is really what determines how a boy is treated. So for example, there was a study done of children growing up in Canada and children growing up in China. And Canada is very much like the United States in terms of the culture. And the most sensitive children in China were the most popular. In Canada, the most sensitive children were the least popular. So that just goes to show you right there that it's society. How is a society treating sensitive people? And that's going to influence especially the children. If you're in a society where it's considered wonderful to be kind and express your feelings, your self-esteem is going to be high. If you're in a society that's very tough and macho, and they consider, boys are weak if they are sensitive, it's going to make low self-esteem. So you see a wide difference. So I had people I interviewed from Thailand, India, Denmark, United States, and Canada. And Thailand and India especially are very communal countries where it's considered a little bit like China had been, that the good for society is what's important. So there was one man growing up who was very sensitive, and he said he was always elected class president because he was always be very kind and make sure everyone's taken care of in his class. So you'll see that from someone, that guy from Thailand, and then I remember there was a man from India who said, people, he compared it especially to America, that you have these kind of macho heroes, like, on the movies, Arnold Schwarzenegger or whoever. Actually, he's Austrian, and who's the one from Belgium? Van Damme? Yeah. These guys actually from Belgium and Austria, but they got popular in American cinema. But this man from India said you would never see the heroes and the male heroes in the Indian movies act like that, because I don't know if you've ever seen Bollywood movies, because there's the male hero of the movie, and all of a sudden he breaks out in song and dance and goes, swinging his hips. And so it's really cultural how males are treated. It's just amazing. And so I found this studies interesting. So, okay, now I'm going to go right to Denmark, because this is where we are. One sensitive man from Denmark said, countries in Scandinavia are quieter than the United States. Loud and pushy behaviors generally looked down upon in Denmark. It's a consensus culture, and the Danes usually don't like very aggressive behavior. Even though the Danish society is less aggressive than the United States, there's a subtle, you know what the word subtle means? Subtle code still exists that can be challenging for Danish sensitive males. So please give me feedback if your experience when I talk about what the Danish men I interviewed said, if it's true for you or not, because you're the experts on it. So it's still there, but it's on a more subtle, not outwardly as much. The sensitive men from India, Thailand, and most of the men from Denmark stated that they were never or rarely teased at school for their sensitivity, unlike the very cruel and taunting teasing the men in North America experienced. So now we're going to go talk a little bit about the role of the mom with a sensitive boy. So there's a myth in some societies that boys don't need as much love and protection as girls, because boys are supposed to be tough and learn to take care of themselves. So, and even with an infant or a toddler, like 2, 3, 4-year-old boy, there's a belief that the moms should be tough with them and avoid coddling them, being too gentle with them. And so boys are frequently forced to separate from their moms too early, because societies frequently make them say, oh, they have to become more independent physically and emotionally for mom at an early age. And that is really trauma for a lot of boys who are sensitive. Oh, go to the nursery school, go to the kindergarten and start, playing with the other kids. Don't hang around mommy here. So really important that that doesn't happen. So moms need to recognize how challenging it can be for their son to make the transition from being home with their mom and dad to go to a new preschool or kindergarten. And it's very important that moms take the extra time to slowly integrate their son into the new environment rather than forcing him to be a big boy and come on. Boys are supposed to just jump right in. During the transition period, a parent, the mom or dad, can stay with the child at school while they slowly increase the time that you have direct contact, a little bit less. And it's also good to choose a school that's less stimulating, preschool, where teachers are understanding, where it's important for the child to bond with the teacher. So you might want to spend the parent and the teacher and the sensitive child could spend time together beforehand so they feel more secure. So, but you still have to have a balance between giving the son the love and support and encouraging him to pursue interests outside the home as the child grows up. Because it's easy sometimes for sensitive boys to end up just hanging out by themselves. So mom gently has to make sure that the boy has a balance between alone time and spending time with other people. But it's also crucial that the boy feels safe where he is, rather than just spending time with anyone where he doesn't feel safe. So it's challenging for even the best of moms to be constantly supportive and accepting of the son's sensitivity. And the isolated form of child rearing, where the burden is placed on one or two frequently stressed out adults, can be very difficult. And in my research, I found the boys who had other positive, loving relationships, like with grandma, aunts, other adult women, had more positive experiences than ones who didn't. So, and I think here probably in Denmark it's the same as it is in most Western countries, where it's, mom and dad at home, or if they're divorced, just one parent at home with the child. As opposed to, again, the communal countries like India, Thailand, China, where you'll have generations of aunts and uncles and grandparents all living together. So it takes the burden off the parent. So I really encourage, if you are living in a situation with a child, it's just mom and dad, that you open it up. It was Hillary Clinton who said it takes a village to raise a child. And I really think the more people who are involved in the child raising, then the child gets other role models and it takes the stress. Because, if you have a sensitive child, it's hard to always be so supportive of everything all the time. So I think that's an important point. But also, it's important that you don't feel sorry for the child, but you keep reinforcing what a beautiful trait you have as a sensitive child. Discipline is very important. And what's interesting is there's a huge parent blog online in the United States. And interestingly, just last week, a parent read my book, The Strong Sensitive Boy, and she says, "Oh my gosh, I was disciplining my son the wrong way. I hope I didn't do damage to his life." And what's interesting is Amazon ranks books where the #1 best-selling book on Amazon in the world is #1. And The Strong Sensitive Boy sells pretty well usually, and the Highly Sensitive Person Survival Guide, usually like 30,000 best-selling, 40,000. After this blog came out, there were comments from like hundreds of parents saying, "Oh, I got to get the book. I think I messed up with my kid too." And I just noticed it was number 2,000, The Strong Sensitive Boy, which is very encouraging that parents are getting the book and learning how to raise boys who are sensitive.